So, Tim, we're going to talk to you again. I'm told that we've got some audio issues fixed. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Hello.
Perfect. Welcome, Tim. You're live
Hello.
on Truth Wanted. How's it going?
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
I'm doing
Great.
fantastic. What did you want to talk to us
All
about today?
right. So I got 3 short stories for you.
3.
They all, yeah. So they all share a common theme. Dreams so real you confuse them with reality.
Been there before.
So
Been there before. That's the worst. I hate
and
those dreams.
these. Oh yeah. These are 3 of my own personal dreams that I'm going to share with you. So, first one, I guess it could be also like a ghost story, but after thinking about it for a while, I've decided it's most likely a dream. But I'm in my room, going to sleep, and I know my door is locked. I'm the only person in my room, and I usually have music playing in the background, at like a low level. And as I'm going to sleep, I start hearing what sounds like someone walking behind me, like in my room. I have hardwood floors, and I can clearly hear someone walking, like, and I'm starting to freak out. Like I just immediately like freaking out, and then I hear someone talking to me, and at the time, like I could kind of understand what he was saying, but I couldn't tell you what he said now, except for the very last thing. He yelled out my roommate's last name. I don't know if I say it on air or not, but like that matters.
No.
But I hear the
Definitely not.
the ghost
Definitely
clearly yell
not.
out.
If you ever
My,
here's a pro tip for you, Tim. If you ever have the chance to blurt anybody's real names out on the internet, you should never do it. That's a pro tip for you.
Yeah, sure. So, anyways, I hear the entity or whatever yell out my roommate's last name, and then it's just, and from that point on, it's quiet. And then maybe 30 seconds later, I'm just hearing music like normal, and so that's the first story basically.
Okay.
And
I mean,
yeah.
Can we crack into the first one before we move on?
Let's crack into it because, first of all, Jimmy's face while you're telling this story, Tim, is fucking hilarious. I gotta say, I know
I'm
you're
sorry.
listening. Jimmy's like, what's going on? Jimmy doesn't know. I'm curious too, Tim. Yeah, go ahead, Jimmy.
Tim, don't take my facial expressions. This is the way I always look. It's not an insult towards you. All right, I have a very intense thinking face. I can't shake it. Tim, so do you believe that there was actually somebody there with you, or what do you think?
Let's see. When this happened, I was probably roughly 18, 19 years old. This is like, oh god, like 20 years ago.
Yeah, but do you believe it was true? Do you believe that there was a spirit or another being of some sort in the room with you?
At the time, yes. At the time, yes.
At the time, yes.
At the house I lived in. Oh, the house I lived in.
Okay, because
was definitely I have multiple stories I could tell you from people who have lived at that house about ghost stories. Like people who have lived here were convinced this place was haunted. The last name that was yelled out, there's brothers. There's 3 of them, and they have stories about being haunted. They used to live in England before they moved to America, and they have stories of the spirits like affecting them in England, and then when they moved to America,
all right,
it seems to follow them.
Entertain me for a second, though. So you move into this house, right? You already have heard these stories about voices and names being shouted out. And then when it happens to you, it's dark. Your body's getting ready to rest. There's some soothing music playing. You're probably really tired. You're walking and you hear noises as if somebody's walking, right? It's not as if you were laying in bed and you heard somebody walking. You were walking and you heard noises, you heard footsteps. I mean, is it possible that maybe you have conditioned yourself? Maybe at the time you had conditioned yourself to also kind of just pick up those things that were planted in your head, those thoughts, those preconceived notions, right?
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I think Tim, you don't. I think Tim doesn't. I think Tim believes. Tim views it as a skeptic now, right? Tim, you don't actually think you were haunted or anything, right?
Correct. Like I think about it now, and
Okay.
I have one thing that I can kind of like, I guess explain what happened. If I could
Okay.
like think of it like on a like if there was no ghost, what else could it have been, right?
Sure.
And so I think about the playlist that I had at the time that I listened to, and there was one. I guess you would call it you probably wouldn't call it a skit because it's not a skit. But the band Typo Negative, they have sometimes in between songs they have like a something that's not a song. Sorry, I don't know how to explain it, but it's not a skit. It's not like funny or anything. But anyways, this one very particular one has you can hear somebody walking, and at the very end of this thing, this person who is walking around ends up like screaming. So I'm thinking I heard that, and just it was like half asleep, and all of the stories that I keep on hearing about the house, and at the time I just believed that spirits were real. I just combined it all together. There's a ghost behind my bed.
Yeah. That makes sense to me.
Just from this.
And you were young. I mean, 18 by law is is an adult, but you're still young. I mean, you're not, your brain is not done. You're not, you're certainly are done forming. Your thoughts are not done forming, and you certainly have a lot of experiences to come in life at the age of 18. I'm so what was the turning point for you? What made you say, all right, I don't believe this anymore. Now I'm a skeptic.
Oh, I was about. When did Passion of the Christ come out?
2004.
2004. Okay, so I'd have been about 19ish. I actually had a conversation with a Christian, with a guy I worked with, and we got to talking about gods. And by this time, I was already an atheist, but I believed ghosts were real. Like, just believe that they're true. Okay, guys, they're just true.
Sure.
Okay.
But I was having a conversation with this guy, and he brought up this point of it's like, okay, well, if you don't believe in God, he's a spirit, but you're sitting here telling me you believe in ghosts and spirits. So how come you can't believe in God? And it was pretty much almost at that moment I just dropped everything spiritual.
That's funny.
Anything
Tim, you know how funny that is? Because he was like, how come you don't believe in God? And you're like, I'm actually going to go the other way and just drop everything. That's really funny.
So, but Tim, you think ghosts are real?
No, he did, though. He doesn't think of any more. That's
did.
what he's saying. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
100% believed ghosts were real. Like,
okay.
There's no question about it until I just had this conversation with this guy. And he made me realize, like, well, yeah, I guess that's true. Like, if God's supposed to be like a spirit guy, and I don't believe in him, well, then I guess I just don't believe in other spirits. And from that point, anything considered magical thinking, to me, is just like, all right, cool. If I can file it under magical thinking, then if you want me to believe in it, you gotta work with me and try to make me, like, help me believe it. What can you help?
I think you subconsciously just like realized that there was some bullshit going on, right? Somebody just sat there and said, "Hey, God's a spirit," and your first thought has to be, "How the hell do you know that? How do you know?"
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it had to trickle down on you. You let it all go. Congratulations.
Yeah. I guess
Well, thank you.
congratulations is in order for that. But no, Tim, that's funny because I think a lot of people do, like, as you're talking about it, it is making me think about how people kind of view their religious experiences in the same way that they view their ghost experiences, which is like, oh, I had a freaky thing happen at a hotel I stayed at once, and some people are like, yeah, I felt really good in a church service once, so that's like the Holy Spirit. You know what I mean? It's like it's the exact same kind of evidence for both kinds of claims, right? Which is really funny to think about. Yeah,
Oh yeah.
I think there's a parallel for sure. Cool.
Oh
All
yeah.
right, well, Tim, we'll go ahead and let you go, but thanks so much for sharing. I know you had some other stories, but we do gotta get things wrapped up here on
Oh
our
yeah,
end,
no problem.
unfortunately. But then maybe next time you can tell some more stories about the life and adventures and dreams of Tim. Thanks again for calling in. I will say, most of the time when people tell me, "Oh man, here's a crazy thing that happened in my dream," I'm just like, "Ugh,
Yeah.
whatever." But you know what? We tied it in, we made it relevant, and you know what? That's what it's all about, baby. Because dreams, here's a weird thought, Jimmy. Here's something I was thinking about. Okay, so like I watch movies, right? I play video games. I
Mm.
consume visual media, right? And sometimes I read books. Well, I read books, but I only read pretty much nonfiction books now. I can't. I think the last time I read a fiction book actually was Ready Player One, which is funny to say out loud. But yeah, I only read nonfiction books. So before, movies, before TV, before all that, with people like 1,000 years ago, when you only had books and pictures in books, what were people's dreams typically like? Because my dreams usually involve stuff I've seen from video games and movies and TV shows, right? And like things I've seen. You think like their dreams were like way substantively different than ours, like just people? I don't know. Well, I guess there's people today
I
that don't watch shit, so I don't know.
I think their brains just regurgitated their environment just like
Yeah,
ours do.
yeah.
You know, I took this medieval history course in college, and
Mm.
it's amazing the amount of people who had dreams throughout the Middle Ages where an angel or a god or spirit came to them.
Yeah,
And you got to think this was their entire being, right?
yeah,
This was their entire society. That was like the priest was like the most important person they saw. Everything their parents told them probably had to relate to God or in some way, shape, or form. So for
right.
them to be dreaming these things, you know, and then what I would be interested to know is, are accounts of religious dreams less likely nowadays? Or
I don't
I don't
know.
know.
'Cause
That would
like,
that would be something I'd be interested in learning about.
that's a good question. 'Cause like I think people are broadly becoming identifying as more spiritual rather than just like religious, right? So maybe
Yeah,
they'll have spiritual interpretations to their dreams, but it may not necessarily reflect an organized religion's
sure.
interpretation of what a dream would be, right? So like there might be that element to it, but that's a good research question, Jimmy. I think you should write another master's thesis on
Ah,
that
I
topic.
don't know, man.
Um,